All right, if you guys could open your books to page 21, we're going to talk about discipline. We're going to cover a lot of do's and don'ts as far as what discipline covers, but just to get our mindset right as far as what discipline is, I'm going to go ahead and read Hebrews 12:11. It says, "For the moment all discipline seems painful rather than pleasant, but later it yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it." And so I know discipline may come very easy to some people, very difficult to some people, but we must always keep in mind that the idea is not necessarily the right then and now, but the future. And so each kid has a potential to come to know the Lord, even through discipline. And so with that, just remember that we're looking towards the fruit that's going to yield later. The fruit of righteousness is going to yield in their lives for you having taken the chance to not just correct them, but discipline them in a loving way. And so if you guys are on page 21, we're going to go ahead and start. First things first, counselors and campers don't leave the campground without permission of the camp director, which is Ryan. I know we've said it already, but it's really important just because a lot of stuff can happen, especially if you're not letting the camp director know if you're outside of the campgrounds. Few expectations of both counselors and campers. First one is for Bible lesson. Make sure that you're always attending those. Don't always find an excuse to get out. You'll notice probably some kids try to go to the bathroom during that time at all times. Try to limit that just a little bit, just because the Bible lessons are a big part of the whole week, because the lessons have been prepared ahead of time. We already know what we're going to talk about. We know basically what we're teaching the kids, and so we want them to get the best out of it, because the lessons basically play into everything the whole week. And so when we expect them to be there for the lesson, we expect you to be there as well, just so you can kind of see what's going on, and that way you can have conversations later with the kids. In the morning, make sure you get dressed quickly and are on time and are following the schedule. If the schedule ever changes, Ryan will let you know. Usually doesn't happen unless it's something that needs to change, but for the majority of everything, just follow the schedule. Be on time where it says you need to be on time for, and just make sure you're getting there. Few complexes to be aware of: the interaction between guys and girls. Make sure that guys and girls are not going into cabins of the opposite sex. And even with that, try to limit as much, quote unquote, interaction between them. Reason being, we don't want the kids to start getting distracted, as well as starting to allow them a chance to get into trouble. Also during swim time, the kids should not be by the beach without a counselor. So don't set your kids on ahead to line up, to be ready, to be able to go into swim time. If they're not with you, they shouldn't be anywhere. They should always be with you at all times, and vice versa. You guys should always be with your kids at all times. Also during swim times, all kids must be down there unless they're excused by the nurse or any other reason. But even then, they can sit on the beach most of the time. So make sure that all your kids are down there. There's no excuse why they shouldn't be. And make sure that the kids listen to the counselors also, as well as you do, just to make sure you know what's going on. If they call a buddy check, make sure it's time for the kids to get together. Help out the lifeguards to get the kids together. Help them listen. The more that you guys help, the quicker we can get things done, and also the more fun the kids get to have. During activities, all campers must attend them. All campers must have good attitudes and language, so be careful also with yourself of having a bad attitude or choosing to say something like, "Oh, this sucks," because then the kids are going to pick up on that and be like, "Oh, this sucks." They're basically going to mirror your attitude. Some of you guys are laughing, but you know it's true. At the evening meeting, all campers must attend this unless excused by the nurse for one reason or another. All campers must go to meal times. All campers must participate in FOB and rest time, as well as you. Make sure that you're in your cabin with your kids during rest time. It's actually a legal, mandatory thing that the state of Michigan does, if I'm correct, yeah? And basically, because we work with the kids so often or so many hours throughout the day, they're required to have an hour of rest. So it literally becomes a legal problem if you're allowing your kids to just hang out and play around during the FOB time. It's really important that they're just sitting down or laying down, mostly important, laying down, resting, taking time out to relax just because they need to. Bedtime, after it's bedtime and lights are out, nobody's to be outside their cabin unless they're in trouble for any reason at all. So nobody can, the kids specifically, are not allowed to leave their cabin until 7:30. We leave at 7 o'clock to go ahead and talk with Ryan for that morning meeting, but do not wake your kids up and allow them to start cleaning or start getting ready, because chances are if you're leaving them alone for that much amount of time, when you come back, you're gonna have a lot more problems that you need to diffuse, rather than just letting them sleep, waking them all up at the same time and just getting your day started, all of them together under the right supervision. If you want to go ahead and flip page 22, camper rules. Each camper is expected to take counselor's word as final and to obey all instructions. If you say for the kid to do something, they're expected to do it. Now, obviously, that comes with a lot of responsibility, as well as with some reasonable thought as to what you ask the kids to do, but basically your word is final. If you're telling them it's time to be quiet, they're expected to be quiet. If you're telling them it's time to eat, they're expected to start eating. If you tell them it's time to listen, they're expected to start listening. So whatever you say goes. CD players, televisions, comic books, and knives are not permitted. Counselors, you may have some type of CD player or music device in your cabin to be able to play some music in the mornings or whenever you guys are in the cabin. But aside from that, kids are not allowed to have them. If you see them, take them away and make sure they get over to Ryan, and he'll go ahead and put them away for that week. Put it in a nice little baggie or something with their name on it, and they'll get it back at the end of the week. This is also included for food, so make sure that there's no food in the cabins. No one is to mark, carve, or in any way damage camp property. Any breakage or damage to camp property should be reported immediately to a counselor. So just tell your kids, if you see anything written on the walls, if you see anything carved, ask them to let you know. Chances are there's already stuff that's there, especially in the guys' cabins that are not as new as the girls' cabins. But just make sure they let you know so that you're made aware of that. And that way, if anything pops up throughout the week, you'll know, okay, that was probably somebody in my cabin. Also, anything that gets damaged like that, make sure you report it to Ryan. Campers are expected to keep the campground clean at all times by picking up and placing paper and trash in the proper containers. So make sure your kids are at camp store, they're throwing their stuff away. At dinner, they're not taking stuff with them to try to eat later. Just have them eat everything there, that way the mess stays there. The last person to leave the cabin or other camp buildings is expected to turn off the lights. Just try your best to conserve energy, just because you don't want to go ahead and waste electricity just because there's nobody there. Also with that, make sure the last person out doesn't lock the cabin, because if the last person out locks the cabin, the only key is back all the way over into the main area, and so you need to make a quick run to go ahead and grab the key. You have to come back, open your cabin, run back to take the keys, and then run back to your cabin. So it literally creates a whole lot more work than you need. Campers should not associate with any strangers they might encounter. Disturbance by outsiders should be reported immediately to the camp director. I mentioned this already. If there's anything weird at all, anything that just seems out of place, go ahead and let Ryan know or let BJ or Shannon know, just because it's really important for anything weird that happens to be reported. There's no sleeping in the cabin during the day except during rest time. You don't decide that all of a sudden you're tired and you want to go take a break, so you're going to go to the cabin while the kids aren't there and take a nap. No, you should be with your kids at all times. There's one break that you guys get throughout the day. Basically, it's during swim time. So there will always be one counselor. There's 2 counselors per cabin, so there will always be one counselor away during swim time taking a break. And since there's 2 breaks throughout the day, both counselors get a break. So that's the only time you're ever away from your kids and are able to be in your cabins taking a break or resting. No campers should be in the cabin by themselves. If there's a kid that forgets something, don't just send them by themselves, but don't just you go with him. Try to avoid just you and another counselor being in the cabin by yourself, as well as allowing them to be in there by themselves. If they're in there by themselves, chances are they're more likely to steal something if somebody's not watching. or if you are in there with the kid by yourself, chances are if they say something against you and nobody else saw, they're going to believe the kid against you, regardless of if it's a truth or a lie. So just make sure you don't put yourself in those kind of situations. At no point shall a camper be hazed, ridiculed, threatened, excessively restrained, or prone to excessive physical exercise or corporal punishment. We have no right to put our hands on the kids, even though sometimes we feel like they need a little slap in the back of the head. Me and Tisha were just talking about that. We call that the sweet spot. But the idea is that you should not be putting your hands on any of the kids. You shouldn't be making them do any type of physical exercise as punishment. No hazing, even if you think it's going to help them feel more welcome in the long run. Honestly, these kids are in 3rd through 5th grade mostly. So you don't want anything that can be like really damaging for the rest of their life. All right, so camper discipline. Just remembering the verse, I'm going to go ahead and read it again. For the moment, all discipline seems painful rather than pleasant, but later it yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it. The very first thing under camper discipline, on page 23, for those of you following, is that discipline without love equals rebellion. Anytime you tell a kid what to do, if it's not done in love, they're going to tell that you don't like them. Half of the kids will always complain to you about how their teachers don't like them. Why? Because the teachers, all they choose to do is yell at them, tell them how many mistakes they're doing, not giving them a right chance to choose the right decision. And so they're going to feel like their teachers hate them. Don't become like one of their teachers. Otherwise, they're just going to rebel against you. They're going to choose not to listen, get themselves in more trouble. And chances are with that kind of behavior, they're going to end up talking to Ryan and going home by the end of the week. We don't want that. We want every kid to get an opportunity not only to hear the gospel, but to experience the gospel through the love that you guys give them, including discipline. You earn the right to properly discipline a camper by spending much loving time with him or her and showing them you care. You'll be surprised how much discipline problems you don't have if you take the time to know each of your kids individually. The more involved you are with your kids, the less likely they are to get in trouble. They respect you when they see that you love them. They respect you when they see that you care about them. And that respect that you give them done in a loving way gets reciprocated. And they basically mirror that. So whatever attitude you have, again, mentioned it earlier, that's the kind of attitude that your kids are going to have with you. No discipline in the blue zone is ever administered without the consultation of the unit leader for these reasons. It gives you a chance to cool down, gives you a chance to get some counsel from someone else, and this is a crisis moment and must be handled with discernment. We're going to talk about the different zones of discipline later. There's a yellow zone, a blue zone, a red zone, and a fire zone. Each kid kind of falls into each of those categories depending on the behavior, but anything blue zone and lower, you guys cannot and do not have the right to administer this kind of discipline. Reason being, again, gives you a chance to cool down. I know sometimes we can see a kid do something and we'll tell them, okay, you can't do that. And you'll turn around and they'll go ahead and do the same thing. And you can just be like, what? Like, I just told you. Like, and you could be so flustered and so upset. Yes, it is kind of in a loving way because you care about them, but at the same time, if it's not, it gives you a chance to cool down, relax, gives you a chance to have some input from someone else. And basically, it's a matter of accountability. If there's somebody else there that can help you keep your cool, that's usually the best whenever handling any discipline situation. We'll never strike a child or use corporal punishment. Already talked about that. We have no right to touch them. We will never use any cruel form of punishment, like depriving a child of his or her basic needs. It's never a good option to tell the kid, if you behave, I'll let you use the bathroom. That's not fair at all. Any kid has a right to use the bathroom when he needs to go. If you need to talk to them after they go to the bathroom. You shouldn't be taking away meals from kids. You shouldn't be keeping them up for several hours at night because they're misbehaving or something like that. Each child has their basic needs: eat, sleep, and use the bathroom. So just allow them to do those things and handle discipline kind of around those things in a way. Let's see. Our attitude towards a situation which requires discipline is that it is a significant opportunity to get through to the core of a kid's problem. Ultimately, the only problem that these kids have is a sin problem. It manifests itself in different ways, whether it be through behavior, through lack of respect for authority, through acting out in different ways, but what they have is a sin problem. So just remember that as you're dealing with the kids, the ultimate goal of discipline is to allow them to come to know our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. We always do the disciplinary action with the camper. If you want the camper to change, you make the extra effort with him or her and watch his or her love and respect for you grow. Whenever you do the discipline with the kid, it shows that you're not just trying to get them in trouble, but more people are affected by their choice. Also, it gives a great chance for you to share the gospel with them. Because if you're doing the punishment with them, are you guys the ones who are guilty of doing what they did? Nope. But are you guys taking on the punishment? Yep. What does that sound like? Sounds like the gospel. Sounds like Jesus, even though being innocent, he goes ahead and he takes our punishment, even though he didn't have to forgive us of our sins. And so every opportunity when you do a discipline with the kid, it gives you an opportunity to share that. Let's see. Don't wait to do what you say you will do. Follow through with guidelines. So basically, whatever discipline guidelines you set as well as we set, just uphold those. Don't wait to hit the kid with like one big blow. Okay, now you're about to get kicked out of camp because you did this, that, and that. And I have a list right here showing of everything you've done in the last 2 days. No. Handle everything immediately. Go ahead and take care of it. Uphold the guidelines as things happen. Take care of them. If you're doing a good job with your kids, you'll be surprised how little discipline you'll have to do. Again, I mentioned that earlier. The purpose of biblical discipline is redemptive, not retribution or for wrongdoing. We're not seeking to punish the kids. We're seeking to allow them a chance to come to know God, to come to know Jesus by directing their ways in a much more environmentally friendly way. I don't know how you would say it. But allowing them a chance to make the right choices. Now, if you guys will turn to page 24, we're going to talk about the different zones of discipline. The yellow zone is the only zone that counselors are allowed to handle. I repeat, the yellow zone is the only one that counselors are allowed to handle. Now, the yellow zone, we call it grace. Basically, a kid will do something and you'll ask them not to do it, and that standard is set. If they break the rule again, what happens is they're going to go ahead and be in trouble. So then there's a consequence applied to that. Now, there's certain things that kids are obviously not supposed to do. For instance, if kids will be kids, if it's the middle of a Bible lesson and they're excited about giving an answer, instead of raising their hand, they'll just yell it out. You know, if you guys weren't clear with them at the beginning about not yelling out, then make sure you let them know, all right, guys, there's no yelling out anymore. Make sure you raise your hands. But if you were clear from the beginning and you said, all right, guys, there's no yelling out, raise your hand, and the kid yells out, that's the chance that you take to go ahead and handle the situation because they chose not to listen. But anyways, the first level of the yellow zone is listening and instruction. Counselor, you always take the time to find out the situation and listen to them. If you are choosing to listen to them, they will respond in a more matter of respect, because the way that discipline is usually handled for them is when they get in trouble and someone sees it, they're automatically guilty. No matter what they say, no matter what they do, they're automatically guilty, and that's it. If you give them the chance to talk to them, what happens is you go ahead and you're, sorry, Eli's distracting me. If you give them a chance to explain themselves, they feel more loved. They feel like they're being listened to. They feel like whether or not they got in trouble, they care about what's happening. So basically, you always listen, find out what happened, and warn them not to do it again. Then there's the immediate action if they choose to do it again after they were warned not to. And what you do is basically if they're in an activity, they're supposed to be doing something fun, they'll do a timeout. So you'll remove them from that activity. If it's something where they're sitting down and they need to be sitting down for that time, what you do is you have them pick up trash. So the idea is you don't want to give a kid timeout who's refusing to participate, because then he'll just get what he wants. So if a kid is choosing not to participate, have him get up, go with you, and start picking up some trash. If a kid is really involved in a game, take them out of that game. Try to make the consequence for the discipline to be as immediate as possible. Also, don't threaten them. Don't say okay, now because you did this, later you won't get to do this. So let's say it's breakfast time and a kid decided not to listen to you. You don't tell them, okay, for dinner now you don't have dessert. Always try to make it as immediate as possible, because by dinner, come dinner, they're going to be like, why can't I have dessert? It's because you did this morning. It's that was such a long time ago. They'll probably try to argue with you about it. But the idea is, the more immediate it is, the more they understand the consequences for their actions. Next zone, page 25, is the blue zone. This zone is handled by the unit leaders, so either by BJ or by Shanna. And so any discipline done in this zone is handled by BJ and Shanna. Anybody else, make sure you guys don't do this kind of discipline, because again, it kind of falls under the rules of discipline that you're not allowed to do. So the blue zone, I'll explain a little bit later more what kind of things fall into the blue zone. But again, only unit leaders do that. Red zone, it's time for a contract. So while we can't do discipline in the blue zone, because that falls on the unit leaders, they cannot do discipline in the red zone, because that falls under the camp director, which is Ryan. So basically what happens is, if a kid continues to come to the unit leaders because of misbehaving, they're going to go ahead and talk to Ryan next, which means they go on a contract. What the contract is, it says that they're going to choose to behave. They basically write it out. I'm going to choose to behave and not continue to act this way, et cetera, list of things that they've done, or else I will be sent home. And they have to sign it. Their counselor has to sign it. And basically, they keep a copy, and the camp director keeps a copy. That way, whenever they start thinking, I could probably get in trouble here. I don't know what goes on in kids' minds sometimes. But if they start feeling that temptation, hey, there's an idea I could do, they'll remember, I have this contract. I can't do this, I can't do that, or I'm getting sent home. Chances are, most kids, they don't want to get sent home, no matter how crazy they act at camp, no matter how bad they act and tough they act. Almost every single kid cries when it's time to go home, because they don't want to go home. Now for the fire zone, again, this means that they're done with camp. They're going to be kicked out of all activities. They're done for the rest of camp, basically. So they'll either be sent home or just sit out the rest of the time, depending on how much time of camp is left. If you guys can turn with me to page 26, we're going to go into a little bit more details. Yellow zone is really simple stuff. If they're not participating in an activity or not being part of the team, you can go ahead and ask them to pick up trash. It says here that they have a timeout, but the thing is, you don't want them to sit out if they're not participating, because they're already sitting out. Food, drink, and candy in the cabin is not allowed. So if you see a kid with it, take it away, throw the food away, and give them a timeout. Disrupting the Bible lesson is really disrespectful, because we want kids to hear the Word of God. So what happens then is you either have them do a timeout after the Bible lesson is over, and let them know that that's what's going to happen, or have them pick up trash. If they're using obscene language, depending on where you are, you'll either have them pick up trash or have a timeout. You guys also notice some of the things say a loss of camp store. That would be more of a last resort, just because camp store is in the middle of the day. And so if they're acting up in the morning, again, you want the consequence to be immediate. And so you don't want the kid to think throughout the whole day, I lost camp store already, I don't care, I can be bad now. You know what I mean? And so what you want them to do is, if it's really near camp store, specifically FOB, if they're choosing to not rest, and you've already given them a warning, let them know, listen, you haven't been listening, so now you've lost your camp store. Disobeying and disrespecting authority to obey, either timeout or loss of camp store. Reason for that, though, is because God commands us to respect our authorities. You guys will notice in the reasons, each one of those gives a nice little redemptive reason of why we kind of enforce this discipline, specifically why it's important for us to enforce it. Trash talking or any gang imitation could start a fight, so make sure that that's not happening. If it does, bring it to the kids' attention, tell them to stop. If they're not listening, either time out or pick up trash. So basically the only disciplines that we're allowed to do as counselors is to give them a timeout, have them pick up trash, lose their camp store if it's close to that time, or bring them to the unit leader to handle any type of discipline. Those are basically our 4 options. Leaving the swim area without permission, basically they'll have to wear a life jacket. And even then, we don't do those. Unit leaders take care of those. And so what happens is you wear it for 2 meals. It basically shows them the importance of the buddy tags, because a buddy tag is literally someone's life. If they leave the swim area without removing their buddy tag, the buddy tag tells us that he's still somewhere in the water. He or she is still somewhere in the water. And that can get really scary if we're looking for the kid and we don't see him. So make sure that they're taking that as something to be very important. Again, they also can't step on the beach without putting their buddy tag on the right spot, because then that tells us that, or when a kid goes on, we don't know if something happens to him, because supposedly the buddy tag is out, so technically the kid's not in the water, according to the buddy tag. So because if they don't follow the rules on that, they're gonna wear a life jacket through 2 meals. So if you mess up in the morning swim time, you'll wear it for lunch and dinner. If you mess up in the afternoon swim time, you'll wear it for dinner and breakfast. And that's the yellow zone discipline. Now for blue zone, this is where only the unit leaders are allowed to assign these. When they skip a class, a meeting, or activity, if any kid skips anything at any time, they automatically need to come to the unit leader. If they're not participating in an activity, now we mentioned before, participating in an activity is something that we handle, and it is. But if it's something that continues, for instance, you told the kid to participate, he participated for a little while, and then he decided he didn't want to anymore, you handle that discipline right then and there because they disobeyed. If they choose to do it again, now it's time to bring them to the unit leader, because obviously they're not listening to you, so you need to take it to the next level of authority. Sneaking out of the cabin at night, automatically go to the unit leader. It's a big safety thing. If they continue to bring food or drinks inside the cabin, specifically from camp store, from any meals, first time you guys handle it, if they continue, you're gonna go ahead and bring it to the unit leader. If they continue to disrupt Bible lesson after you've talked to them, that's when you bring them to the unit leader. Any bad language that continues after you've talked to them, bring them to the unit leader. Disobeying, disrespecting, disobeying or disrespecting authority. Again, if it's something that continues after you've handled it with them, but then they choose to continue to do it, bring them to the unit leader. Any trash talking or gang imitation that continues after you've already handled it with them, bring them to the unit leader. If they're choosing to not sleep at night continuously and are disrupting more than one night, you bring them to the unit leader. Now, the unit leader has options to either make them run the hill, give them a timeout, have them pick up trash. The unit leader will see fit as to how to handle that situation depending on the kid. Or also, if they're not sleeping out at night, they're going to be taken out of the cabin for, 5, 10, 15 minutes to allow the other kids to go ahead and get to sleep, but also allow that kid to calm down, be away from everybody else, away from the attention, and give them a chance to calm down so that when they go into the cabin, they'll be able to sleep. Let's see. Also on page 28, these are things that automatically bring a kid to the unit leaders. So if any of these happen, it's not up to you to handle them. It's up to you to bring the kid or anybody involved to the unit leaders. So any fighting or stealing is automatically brought to the unit leader's attention. If any kids have any alcohol, drugs, tobacco, weapons, or fireworks, automatically come to the unit leader. If they're leaving the swim area for for camp, without placing the buddy tag in the right spot, they're automatically coming to the unit leader. If they're getting physical with people of the opposite sex, or in the cabins of someone of the opposite sex, they're automatically coming to the unit leader. Do you guys have any questions so far? No? All right. Red zone. The unit leader is responsible for this discipline, the discipline in this zone, as long as they consult the camp director, I believe. So if a camper is persistently disobeying, has come to the unit leader more than once, continues to disrespect authority, it's time for them to move up to the red zone and get on a contract. Also, if one is persistently fighting and intimidating other people, and they've come to unit leader a few times, they're automatically getting on contract and coming to Ryan. And also, campers who steal more than once are coming to Ryan for a contract. Any campers who exhibit the following behavior, it's just a bit of a repetition, come straight to unit leader. If they have any alcohol, drugs, tobacco, weapons, or fireworks, or if they're getting physical with the opposite sex or in the cabins of someone of the opposite sex. So basically, to cover it all, if you guys can follow along on page 30, as far as penalties and disciplinary actions, counselors and other camp staff, we either give them 5 or 10 minutes timeout, pick up trash, lose camp store, or even take them out of the cabin at night if they're not sleeping. As far as wearing a life jacket, the unit leaders will handle that. No push-ups are allowed. If a kid has to run as part of their consequence, the unit leader assigns a time and everything. You guys cannot make kids run. Counselors cannot make kids run. And so then unit leader has the option of doing all of the above plus loss of activity like swim time. If it's swim time coming up and a kid is misbehaving, don't take away the whole swim time. Give them a chance. Like say, okay, you chose to behave like this, you just got 5 minutes off your swim time. 10 minutes off your swim time, something like that. Because if you go ahead and take away their whole swim time right off the bat, there's no reason why they should go to swim time. There's no reason why they would want to go to swim time, let alone there's no reason why they think they should behave during swim time. Yeah, and they'll probably try to get you a life jacket. That's right, Chris. All right, and that covers the discipline. Do you guys have any questions?